Some big legal news out of Trump's federal election interference case could spell doom for his defense. So I have for you some pretty big news relating to Trump's federal election interference case. Let me first give you the context and then I'll update you on the latest on that. So a little bit ago, Trump's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss the case altogether. Throw it out, citing absolute presidential immunity. The argument, incorrect argument, but the argument being that everything Trump did while trying to stay in power was within his official duties as president. Thus, he should be completely legally immune. Now, Jack Smith's team, I think, made a pretty convincing case to the contrary, but to give you a sense of the argument that was being made by Trump's legal team, one of the excerpts of their motion to dismiss read, quote, "The prosecution does not and cannot argue that President Trump's efforts to ensure election integrity and to advocate for the same were outside the scope of his duties." Because Trump trying to block the peaceful transfer of power through a fraudulent electors plot, an attempt to block the certification of the election, pressuring local election officials to disenfranchise the voters, etc. All that was a part of Trump's efforts to ensure election integrity. Makes a lot of sense. By the way, Trump's lawyers have been making generally some pretty wild arguments in this case. There was a breakdown a couple weeks ago on lukebeasleyshow.com/news. I'll link it below that discussed this. One of the lines from Emily, who does great legal analysis on the website, read, quote, "His attorneys have continued to file conspiracy-ridden motions in that same jurisdiction full of bizarre claims that give an early indication of what his defense in the January 6th federal trial will look like." And then Emily goes on to break down some examples of what she's referring to, just really wild stuff. And I think it gives us a sense of what we're going to be seeing in these trials. They're going to be pretty wacky for sure. And so far, not looking good for Trump on that front. But getting back to the context for the most recent big legal Trump news, his team made this presidential immunity argument that I just read you an excerpt from. It was rejected by Judge Chutkan. They are appealing, and the hope for them is to tie this up in litigation for really as long as possible. If they can keep appealing, this could take months and months to be finalized, which would delay the trial past the 2024 election, which seems to be Trump's hope. And hopefully that's not going to end up working, because it would be good to know, very relevant for voters to know, if Trump is going to be found guilty or not on crimes relating to a coup attempt he engaged in when he was president, when he's now running for president once again. And so in response to Trump's legal team trying to tie this up in litigation for as long as possible, Jack Smith responded by going straight to the Supreme Court and asking them to just go ahead and weigh in on the issue to expedite the process. And here is the pretty big news on that.
Breaking news, the Supreme Court just moments ago taking a step forward in a historic case involving Donald Trump. Late this afternoon, the Supreme Court agreeing to hear an extraordinary petition from special counsel Jack Smith, who is pursuing this criminal prosecution of Trump for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, the nation's highest court is now set to weigh in for the first time on the historic criminal prosecution of a former president. The special counsel is asking the justices to break from tradition and decide quickly on whether Donald Trump has immunity. Here is what the special counsel wrote in this petition. This case presents a fundamental question at the heart of our democracy, whether a former president is absolutely immune from federal prosecution for crimes committed while in office. Robert Costa is our chief election and campaign correspondent. He's here to help us understand these big developments. So, Robert, the special counsel is trying to make sure that his case moves forward on March 4th, right?
Nora, that's exactly right. Jack Smith is looking into the future. He knows when the January 6th trial begins next year, former President Trump will claim it's illegal and try to raise that with the highest court. That view is backed up by our sources who say Trump is pushing his lawyers to appeal, and argue he should be immune from prosecution about his alleged conduct while serving as president. But now Smith is trying to get ahead of Trump's strategy to make sure he's on solid ground legally and won't be delayed by a flurry of motions from Trump. Trump's team pushed back against him today, saying Smith is attempting to bypass the appeal process. They now have until December 20th to respond before the high court weighs in if they do it all of this, of course, is going to take place as the Republican presidential race heats up next spring, and Trump could be wrapping up the nomination.
Also, in this petition, why did the special counsel reference U.S. versus Nixon?
Nor history hovers over everything, especially with this case. And remember, back in 1974, the U.S. government said President Richard Nixon couldn't protect his tapes. Now, the special counsel Jack Smith is looking for a similar ruling from the court to say prosecutors can move forward and try to prosecute a president or a former president.
And do it expeditiously. Robert, thank you.
So that's pretty big. The Supreme Court has agreed to decide on whether or not they'll hear the case relatively quickly. Trump's team has until December 20th to respond. Then the Supreme Court will make their decision. To be clear, it's big that they're committing to deciding on if they'll hear the case quickly, but it doesn't mean they'll choose to hear the case. The hope is that they will, and then make a final decision on Trump's presidential immunity argument. Hopefully they knock it down. And if they do, and I think they will, it seems wild you would say all of that presidential immunity. And if they do, then Trump's defense, in my mind, is largely sunk. Jack Smith's case is so strong, as we've talked about. And so if Trump can't get out of it by saying, well, I'm just immune because I did those things as president, then I don't know how he avoids a conviction. But of course, we'll see in due time. Now, while we're talking about the legal troubles of MAGA, as we did yesterday, I want to update you on Rudy Giuliani's defamation trial. He is currently in the middle of a defamation trial relating to his lies about two Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, and he accused them of all these different wild conspiracy theories, engaging in voter fraud, handing around a flash drive, doing illegal things with it. And of course, these things were false, but he caused them to be, along with Trump and other right-wingers, threatened and harassed, and their lives were turned upside down. The judge, as I've talked about, already determined that Giuliani lost the case, but now the jury's deciding on damages, how much Giuliani will have to pay Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. And what's really aggravating is, I'm sure we'll also see this with Trump, but Giuliani has submitted legal filings that say one thing to try to get himself out of a whole lot of legal trouble, and then he goes out and says something different publicly. So for example, we talked about how in this case, Giuliani had to admit that what he said about Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss wasn't factual. But then yesterday, he left court and said this.
Whatever happened to them, it's unfortunate if other people overreacted, but everything I said about them is true.
Do you regret what you did to Ruby
Of course
Freeman?
I don't regret it. I told the truth. They were engaged in changing votes.
There's no proof of that.
Oh, you're damn right there is. Stay tuned.
What a truly vile person. I'll remind you of some of Ruby Freeman's testimony in front of the January 6th Select Committee in a moment to show you the effect of these lies. It has an impact. But as I'm sure you can imagine, because of the conspiracy theories about Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, they had to move. They were constantly being threatened. Ruby Freeman said she was afraid to tell people her name in public. Two beautiful human beings who were just serving their community, serving our democracy, and because of an anti-democratic fool couldn't accept that he lost, their lives were wrecked in so many ways. And the judge in this case actually responded to the clip that we just watched. CNN reports the federal judge overseeing Rudy Giuliani's defamation damages trial in Washington, D.C. rebuked the former Donald Trump lawyer Tuesday over quite defamatory comments he made a day earlier to reporters about the two Georgia election workers at the center of the case. That was the clip we watched. U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell said Giuliani's comments outside the federal courthouse in D.C., quote, could support another defamation claim. And that's absolutely the case. And I think Giuliani is genuinely an unwell person. Here's him doing a live stream or recording a video or something after the trial yesterday. And just like Trump, he's making himself out to be the ultimate victim.
When you're the Christian in the lion's den, in the Colosseum, and the 5 lions are attacking you, you can't play diddlywinks. We don't play diddlywinks. You'll see.
Mayor?
So just have faith and confidence. They had a good time today by just talking and talking and talking, and we'll have a good time
Yes.
later by proving and proving
That
and proving. Have we won every battle with them on who's telling the truth? Yes.
Separate from what he's saying there, being ridiculous, what a strange dynamic. Him sitting there in a hotel room, people off camera chiming in. Oof. If you're someone who watches Rudy Giuliani sitting in a hotel room complaining about how he's so offended that people want justice for him trying to destroy their lives, please do some introspection. Something's wrong if that's your evening plan. I'm going to tune into Rudy Giuliani, who legally admitted he lied about these things, but he's going to go and do it even more publicly. Now, the only good thing about this behavior is the fact that likely it means the jury is going to hit him with massive damages, as they should. With that being said, all these lies aren't just about random names in articles. These are real human beings with lives, with families. And so I want to once again put a face to the name of Ruby Freeman. Here's a moment from her testimony in front of the January 6th Select Committee discussing the impact of Trump and his allies' lies about her and her daughter.
I've lost my name and I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security, all because a group of people starting with number 45 and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shay, to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen.
We're just going to play the tape.
There is nowhere I feel safe. Nowhere. Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one. But he targeted me, Lady Ruby, a small business owner, a mother, a proud American citizen who stand up to help Fulton County run an election in the middle of the pandemic.
So hopefully Rudy Giuliani is held accountable for the damage that he did, and hopefully the others are as well. Before we go, don't forget to become a member at lukebeasley.com/membership to get the daily bonus show Monday through Friday. Plus follow me on Threads at Luke Beasley Official, Instagram at Luke Beasley Official, X at Luke P. Beasley, and sign up for the Beasley Brief, a daily morning newsletter that summarizes the previous day's events by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/brief. And I'll talk to you all next time.